Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I work with a lot of individuals with attachment wounds. Today, I wanted to go over why a lot of couples that are anxious and avoidant couples, so where one is anxious and one is avoidant, why they can be unhealthy and why they don't always work. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean they never work or there's not a way around it. But it does mean that individuals who lack some self-awareness of these dynamics have a higher percent chance of it not working than those who likely are. That's my perspective, and I could be wrong. But I am not saying that this cannot work. But the point of this video is to highlight some of the aspects and barriers that come in this particular dynamic because it is a very strained dynamic. And I do personally believe if an individual is moderately to strongly anxious and the other is moderately to strongly avoidant, particularly dismissive, but both, the relationship will likely be very strained because of the lack of understanding one another. And so I'm going to give some of those points today, and then you guys can kind of learn how I kind of evaluate these couples, but also if you notice that you guys have these dynamics, it's a good concrete way to recognize what are ways that I can make this relationship work. If I'm doing X, Y, and Z, then maybe the relationship isn't a lost cause because I can understand these issues in a concrete fashion and adjust them, okay? So the very first one is there is a natural lack of understanding, or another way of saying is there is a misunderstanding between how each other's attachment style operates. So sometimes this is subconscious and sometimes this is not. But usually what it is that you guys have a perspective of one another. And it's usually a negative connotation if I'm being honest. But I want to go over some things that I hear in session about how the other perceives. Okay, so anxious individuals. A lot of you guys may think that your avoidant partner is cold, detached, selfish. I've heard complicated. I've heard convoluted, so complicated, very difficult. I've heard rigid, which I agree with, but it can be very negative. I've heard more extreme cases like they should be alone forever, or why are they even in this relationship, or everything they say, is wrong and they don't know what they're talking about, and they're, very negative stuff, right? And they also believe that avoidant individuals deeply inside, and a lot of anxious individuals will not admit this, but they feel like somewhere, and this may be triggering, so just be aware, but I'm just saying what I hear. Somewhere deep inside, anxious individuals feel like avoidant individuals are more valuable than them, almost like they put their partner on a pedestal. And so they overcompensate for that by having these negative perspectives of them. There's a part of anxious individuals that are almost jealous, not jealous, envious, I believe is the correct word, of how avoidants just don't care. And anxious individuals wish that they could feel like that, but they just can't, right? And so they're very ashamed. So a lot of individuals who are anxious, sometimes they will, they don't want to admit what they come across. So they may say they're secure. They may even say they're, a lot of individuals who are anxious, they may say that they have an avoidant side. Maybe they do. But sometimes it's a way to hide the fact that they are in fact anxious, and they're just embarrassed, and they've been so hurt by avoidant individuals and how negative avoidant individuals are towards them that they don't want to admit they're anxious because they think being anxious is something to be ashamed of. And so somewhere inside they put their avoidant partner on a pedestal. And so that's why anxious individuals are very strongly negative towards avoidant individuals, almost like piercingly negative, because they're trying to fight their own perspective. Why do I think you're this way? I don't like that. Like, why do I look to you for approval? Why do I put you on such a high pedestal? You're not that great. You're X, Y, and Z. And that's why you notice a lot of anxious individuals are very sharp with their negativity, because somewhere inside they're embarrassed at how much they like the avoidant partner, how much they perceive the avoidant partner to be amazing and independent and They put them on a pedestal. And I understand that's triggering, but that is subconsciously why this happens. And so that's why anxious individuals have a little bit of a harder time walking away. And that's why they almost force themselves to walk away. And they don't like hearing positive things about avoidant individuals. Not all of you guys are like this, by the way. I'm not saying all of you guys, but they don't like hearing the positive because they already feel like they're not good enough. And now you're going to give more excuses to avoidant individuals. You're going to say they're better because already anxious individuals feel like they're not as important. And so sometimes they don't like to hear the positives. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's true. Anxious individuals have a lot of good traits. Individuals who have anxious attachment, they actually struggle with self-esteem. And avoidant individuals do not struggle with self-esteem nearly as much as anxious individuals. So you guys have a lot of negative perspectives, which creates that lack of understanding that we're talking about from the different attachment style. And I'll give you an example. But let's first move on to how avoidant individuals perceive anxious individuals. Now, this one's probably going to be triggering as well, but I'm just sharing what it is, okay? Avoidant individuals perceive anxious individuals as, these are the most negative terms, right? I just hear this in session, but I want to share it with you. Perceive it as, demanding, needy. I heard the word weak before, weak. Pushy, dramatic, high maintenance, difficult, complicated, selfish, which is funny because they both say it to each other. And then deep inside, avoidant individuals have this guilt and shame, right? Just like how anxious individuals deep inside, they put their partner on a pedestal and they want to overcompensate. Avoidant individuals have their own shame where they feel guilty. They feel, which I made a video on this a couple days ago, they feel very guilty and they kind of feel like it's their fault that their anxious partner is like this. And so that's why they put the negative connotation. You're needy, you're demanding, because in their mind, they're thinking, oh, you're probably needing and demanding because I'm not giving you enough. And there's some truth to it, but they're really embarrassed by that. They're very ashamed of it. So that's why they have these negative perspectives to deny. Just like anxious individuals, they cover up that negative perspective. The positive perspective they have by trying to be overly negative. Avoidant individuals, they do something very similar, right? They want to say, you are needy, you are demanding. It's not me. It's not because I'm not giving you enough. You're just naturally like that. And there's a truth to both sides. There's truth to both sides. But what ends up happening, if you have this natural misunderstanding, you guys will never come to terms with what the other person is saying. So let's say, for an example, the anxious individual says, I want to be like my best friends. Let's say they got a best friend couple and this best friend is Ted and Clara. That's a random name I came up with. So a couple, Ted and Clara or however you want to say it. There's two couples, right? And I wish you were like Ted. Let's say the anxious is a female and her avoidant is a male. Ted always sees Clara every day, buys her flowers, gives her everything. How come you're not like that? So the anxious individual is comparing feeling low self-esteem, and the avoidant individual is saying, you're too needy, you're too demanding. Fine, if you want someone like that, why don't you go get it? My way or the highway. And so now the anxious individual feels very rejected. How could you say that? You're so selfish, you're so cold. And so immediately what's actually happening is they're fighting about their beliefs towards each other, not anything to do with this couple, Ted and his girlfriend, right? Nothing about them, but they're acting like it is. They're using that as a vehicle to actually pick at each other without realizing it. What's really happening is the anxious individual is simply saying, I got inspired by this couple. What can we do to learn from them? But that's not what the conversation sounds like, but that's actually what's happening, right? What can we do to learn from that couple? And the avoidant individual is saying, you're putting too much on me. I can't do that. I wish I could, but I can't. What can I do that's much easier? Why do you have to compare me? Right? So that's actually how they're feeling, but that is not what they communicated at all. And that is because of this lack of understanding about how the other one operates. So it's very important to recognize anxious individuals. Avoidant individuals just are not always as ready as you guys are, honestly. They don't think about couples and sit there and be like, oh, wow, I wish I had that. They don't feel like that. They just don't. Avoidant individuals, you guys can appreciate couples, of course, but it's not something you think about. Rather, you think about, this is such a stressful day. When is this day over so I can sit and just watch TV and, eat my bag of chips? That's what you're thinking about. And anxious individuals, I can't wait to be done with work. so I can hang out with my boyfriend. I can't wait to show, or girlfriend, right? I can't wait to show everybody my partner. Avoidant individuals, you don't like that. I don't like people in my personal space. I don't like when people ask me. Sometimes you think it's embarrassing. Two different thinkings, two different thought processes. Just remember that it's not personal either direction. Really important, okay? The next one is believing the way you operate is the correct way. Avoidant individuals, you think that it's the best way to manage your stress is to not talk about it. And the best way is to avoid it and immerse in hobbies, right? That's a good strategy, but it's also an avoidance strategy. It could be a defense mechanism depending on how maladaptive it is, right? Well, it depends on how you communicate. We won't get into that one, but it might not be healthy. It might not be healthy, right? But that's how you think. You think that's the best way. So when your anxious partner comes to you and says, excuse me, I had a really rough day, I want to talk about it, you as the avoidant partner thinks this is the wrong way. All you're going to do is make yourself feel worse. And then you shut your partner down. Or if your partner, and I see this one a lot, an anxious partner is feeling sick and they're like, why aren't you wanting to stay at my house? Why aren't you cooking me soup? Why aren't you asking me if I'm okay? And the avoidant individual's like, why would I ask you? I'm giving you space because when I'm sick, avoidant individuals, they might not say this directly, but they're thinking, when I'm sick, I don't want anyone to bother me. I want to do it by myself, right? Not all avoidants are like this, but some. And so avoidant individuals think their way is the correct way. So they're thinking, anxious partner, you're doing this wrong. I'm not going to do what you're saying because you operate wrong. You need to do what I'm saying, right? The way you manage your stress is wrong. All you're going to do is make yourself more stressed. You shouldn't talk about it. Go do a hobby. I'm not going to listen to what you're saying. You're doing it wrong, right? And then anxious individual, you have to listen to what I'm saying. You're always, detaching yourself. You're always avoiding me. The way you do things is wrong. The right way is to talk about it. We have to talk about it. We have to have this conversation right now, this very instant. I can't wait a moment. It has to happen right now. Both are right, both are wrong. I don't know, but you guys are operating differently. That I can say. So the better way to adjust this is try and learn where the other person is coming from while still adjusting. I talk about adjusting with relationships a lot because I'm a therapist and that's my job. And I love it. I think it works. So if you're an avoidant individual and you just had a hard day of work and you want to sit on the sofa, eat your chips and just veg out, love that for you, by the way, but your partner called you and said, hey, I have a rough day. Can we talk? I would recommend you lean in and say, okay, yeah, but my show's about to start in 10 minutes. Can we make this a quick conversation? And the anxious partner, be appreciative that they're talking to you because typically they would just say no. So be appreciative and learn that, okay, they also need to manage their own space and I want to give it to them because that's what makes them feel good. So let's do a little bit of what makes me feel good, a little bit of what they feel good, and then we'll have a happy day, right? Very simple. Simple when you say it out loud, not easy in practice, but give it a shot, give it a try, okay? The next one is thinking love and relationships only go one way. So anxious individuals, you guys think after, I've heard this before, after like 3 months or something, you guys should say you love each other or something, or like, where is this going? Or, what's something like that. I hear this sometimes. You guys in the comments, you probably know what I'm talking about, and you guys can fill me in. It's like, you always want to know where something is going, or like, how do I even say this? Like, you always want to know things. Like, yes, this is what it is. You don't like the uncertainty in the relationship. Avoidant individuals actually appreciate that uncertainty because it adds that mystery, it adds that freedom, right? And if you are an avoidant or you've been an avoidant or whatever, you know how that feels, right? It's like, it feels good to know, it's good where it is right now, right? It actually feels nice. This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like, right? Nice relationship, knowing there's no pressure. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It feels good. No one's down my throat. No one's telling me what to do. This is nice. This is what love is. There's not arguing. We like each other. Things are moving swimmingly. It's all happy. Anxious individuals are sitting there like, no, we have to have this in place and we need to know when this is happening. And I want to get married at age 25 and I want to have kids before 30 and whatever the rule is. And avoidant individuals do not operate like that. Avoidant individuals are like, okay, I want this in place and then maybe that'll happen. I don't even know if I ever want to get married. It may be, it's a maybe. It's a long time, but it's a maybe. So avoidant individuals think love works that way. Love is flexible. It's It's, I wouldn't even say flexible, but it's like, it's freeing, it's relaxing, it's always feeling good all the time. If it's not, then it's not love, right? Anxious individuals think love is no matter what, it's always there. It's always going to be there. It's never going to leave you. It's going to be there no matter what. If you do this, then you don't love me. If you ignore me, then you don't love me. If you don't do what Ted and Clara do, you don't love me. If you don't do this, you don't love me. Like anxious individuals always think love is a very particular way, and avoidants do as well, but their particular is different. It's very important to recognize that love and relationships are fluid. They are not always the same way. Doesn't matter what Ted and his girlfriend are doing. You're not in that relationship, right? This relationship goes a different way. You guys might say you love each other after 3 years. You guys might be together for 5 years and then you break up. I don't know. Nobody knows. But love and relationships are not one way. So avoidant individuals, you think if it has a fight in it, it's wrong. No. You can have a really difficult relationship in the beginning and then later it is the one that lasts the longest. You don't know. But the only way you're going to know is if you try it. And so I recommend both of you guys learn from each other's strategies. And I would say don't give up. You can if it's too difficult or you feel like there's other options for you. But if you really love each other, love does take some work and you got to have a little bit of grit. And I'm not saying to stay where you're unhappy. That is not what I'm saying. But if you feel like there's something benefiting both of you guys, I would recommend you try and look for strategies. And a good example is look at how your partner perceives love and lean into that. Avoidant individual says, I don't really like fighting. Okay. If you're the anxious partner, okay, you'll back up on fighting. Anxious individual says love is when, I don't know, we give each other compliments or we say, I love you. If that's what you think love is, avoidant individual, maybe lean into that a little bit. Look at it from another person's perspective. You will learn something. I think it's really important, okay? The next one is not respecting, and this is usually unintentionally, not respecting the other individual's bandwidth and perspective, right? So anxious individuals, you guys need more reassurance. That's your bandwidth. After a certain while, if you guys are not receiving that love or connection or reassurance, you guys, you crash out, you react, you're hurt. That's your bandwidth. Avoidant individuals, learn that about your partner. Learn that you need to give a little bit more to your partner to allow them to operate and feel loved. And it's going to help you because they're not going to pick as much fights, right? Anxious individuals. Avoidant individuals don't need as much attention and connection as you do. In fact, that can be very overwhelming and suffocating. So know that bandwidth. After a while, if you guys have hung out for like 4 hours and you're starting to notice your avoidant individual is really like checking out, honestly, say, I know that we had a really good time. I'm really happy. But I noticed that you're kind of, checking out or not really as into this as you were. Do you want me to leave? Do you want to do something else? What's going on? Have some sort of communication in a respectful way because you know your partner's bandwidth and you want them happy. This relationship is both of yours. So you definitely want your partner to be happy. Okay. And the last one is you guys struggle to communicate your needs due to negative assumptions about the person, right? So avoidant individuals, they're not going to express their needs typically because they're afraid their partner is going to react, right? They're going to crash out. They're not going to compromise. Avoidant individuals may feel like if I say anything, you're going to judge me. You're going to get upset. You're going to make fun of me. I feel like all my choices are wrong and the only thing that makes you happy is if I roll over and just do what you want. And so I never get my way. So I either have to lie or I have to say no very firmly because you're never going to budge. That's how avoidants think, right? Anxious individuals think you never meet my needs. It's not fair. I feel unloved. You never compromise. You don't like me. I've heard some of these things, right? And what ends up happening is because you guys have these negative assumptions, when you communicate, you operate on that. Avoidant individuals say, okay, I'm just going to lie because otherwise my partner is going to crash out. Or I'm not going to say anything because they're going to get mad at me. I'm not going to tell you how I really feel. And then what ends up happening is your partner doesn't know. And the anxious individual, maybe they're not going to crash out. Maybe they're not going to be upset. But you don't know because you didn't say anything. And so it's very important to recognize if you have those negative assumptions, challenge it. Give your partner a fair chance, right? An anxious individual, you think your partner's never meeting your needs, or they don't like you because they're not meeting your needs, or you feel unloved. I would challenge you to think, are there other areas where they're showing love? Do they really not like you, or is it just your perception of liking? So I hope this video made a little bit of sense. Again, I don't try and make my videos all neat and perfect. There are plenty of videos out there that do that. I am not that person. This is not my job. I just make videos because I have fun and I want to help you guys, okay? So it's never going to be as polished as maybe you guys expect, okay? I hope this still was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.